Hello, welcome to Andrew Fixes. Today I am working on this 2015 Nissan Leaf and it's got a clicky axle. If you've experienced this in your own Nissan Leaf, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about without me going any further. But if you haven't, it's a problem on quite a few different Nissans, not just the Leaf. I think because the Leaf is so quiet, you probably notice it more. So what I mean by a click, well, I'll play a little clip. Essentially, if it wasn't obvious from that clip, then as you come from coasting or regenerative braking onto the throttle, or if you let the throttle off and you go onto regenerative braking, particularly if the vehicle's on the flat, you hear a click. There's been a service bulletin about this from Nissan, and essentially what seems to happen, or what seems to be causing it, is that the axle nut works loose and allows the axle just a slight bit of movement, or the drive shaft a slight bit of movement. The fix, as far as I can tell, is to remove the outboard end of the drive shaft, clean it, apply some decent molybdenum lubricant to it, and then put it back together with a new nut. And I'm hoping that is going to fix the problem, because it's really annoying. One of the first things I noticed when I first drove an electric car was how amazingly quiet it was. And this is just a little fly in that ointment, if you like, hearing this as you're driving along. Okay, so to lubricate the drive shaft splines, we have to take the drive shaft out. To take the drive shaft out, we have to basically loosen this hub carrier from the lower arm and from the track rod or the steering arm, so that we can move it about and get the drive shaft out. So there's a split pin to start with. These split pins are rather odd in that they have one long arm and one short arm. Like that. So this is a 32mm. That didn't feel very tight at all. Certainly didn't need a big breaker bar, so maybe there is some mileage in what we're doing, eh? I noticed in the Nissan workshop manual that the nut and the washer need to be changed. Unfortunately, I have only furnished myself with new nuts and not a new washer. It's not a flat washer, so it's got a front side and a back side. Thankfully, the front is coloured blue, so I don't need to mark it. That'll help me remember which way back it goes. Having taken that nut off completely, now we'll have a go at the steering arm. This is a 16. Give it a little blast of that, and while I remember, I'll also give a much bigger blast of that to the pinch bolt at the bottom there. Right, get your rear defenders on again, the hammer's coming out. Okay, now we move on to the pinch bolt. at the bottom. These are both 14s, both nut and bolt. So I use my plastic faced hammer, very useful. This isn't threaded, I'm just doing that to break the rust, because this is on a part of the car that gets loads of dirt on it. Looks like the rubber hammer isn't quite aggressive enough. So you can probably see why that was stuck, covered in rust. So before we go any further, I'm just going to tap the drive shaft in a little way, just to check it's moving, which it is. You probably saw it moved a little bit. Now comes probably the biggest challenge, and that is getting this lower arm out of the hub. What I'm doing here is using my best bodging screwdriver, and I hope all of you watching have got a bodging screwdriver. If you haven't, I recommend you get one, or you assign one. This one's a strike through screwdriver, so particularly useful. So what I'm trying to do here is just use whatever lever points I can find to loosen these two apart from each other. You can get big long levers to do this. The problem I find with that is that I'm never in an area where I've got enough space to swing one of those. So apologies if this section of the video isn't particularly slick. I guess it's just finding a way of levering it whilst being very careful not to damage the rubber boot on the ball joint, because what I really don't want to do is damage that and have to go and fit one of those as well. Bit more lube. Right, hopefully you saw that. Wasn't particularly straightforward. Partly because of the angle I'm having to work at, but let's not make too many excuses. It's just a bit of a pig. It's rusted in. The key things are to wedge the two halves of the pinch section aside with a screwdriver. Lots of WD-40. Make sure you don't lever on the rubber boot, because you'll damage that and it will let water in and then it will fail prematurely, and that'll be an MOT failure. So that'll be time for a new arm probably, or a new ball joint if you want to press it out. So now time to take the drive shaft out altogether. I carry on using my plastic hammer. There we go, that's as far as that needs to come out. So now it's a case of giving this a good clean up. Can see some marring on the splines actually, this end, and then down there I can see some as well. I don't know whether that's normal. I haven't done this job on enough Nissans to sort of be able to comment on that. This is just brake cleaner I'm using. Being careful not to pull the drive shaft out altogether. There's absolutely no need to do that. Give these threads a go as well. Wait for that to dry. Won't take very long because it's quite a warm day. While we're doing that, can you see where I'm looking? Yeah, we're going to clean in here as well. This time I'm putting the brake cleaner on the rag because I don't want to spray brake cleaner in here and get it on the wheel bearing. Actually, while you're here, give your wheel bearings a quick spin, feel for any crunchiness or play. It's easier to feel when there's no extra weight on them from the wheel or the drive shaft. Those ones feel fine, as they jolly well should, at only 25,000 miles. Okay, now time to put some lubricant on. I read quite a lot about this before I bought the lubricant that I bought. We're looking for something with a really high molybdenum disulfide content. I think I saw 50%, either 40 or 50%. I really struggled to find something, but this Rocol dry moly paste is what I found. It's blooming expensive, but thankfully you only use a small amount of it. And to be quite honest, if it stops it clicking, I don't mind the expense. I'd rather use a decent lubricant and only have to put it in once than use a cheapo lubricant and have to come back and do this again. And you can tell this has got a high molybdenum disulfide content because it is really thick and hard to apply. But that's quite alright by me, as long as it does the job. So go all around the splines, and then all around the inside too. Challenge is now to get the drive shaft back in without smearing this stuff everywhere, and that is quite difficult. It does get everywhere. In fact, before we embark on putting it back together, ooh, crunchy. Okay, that looks a bit nicer. Do the same with the hole that it goes into as well. I'm going back to my other gloves because they've got a bit more protection, just in case anything slips. It's kind of a situation where you might still rip some skin off your hand, but not nearly as much, or at the very least you won't get as much dirt in it. There we go. So let's put the washer back and a new nut. You don't have to get these nuts from Nissan, they are available as an aftermarket part, and I'll put the link in the description to where I got mine. Just lubricating the threads a little bit. You can see it pulling the stub into the hub wheel bearing. That's finger tight now, we'll leave that like that. So next is putting this back. This has obviously got to go all the way back in, otherwise the bolt won't sit in that groove there. That's gone straight back all the way in, so that's really good. That was worth cleaning up. I'm just going to go and sand some rust, or brush some rust off that bolt. Okay, let's get this bolt back in. I'll just put some copper slip on it. I'm not a universal fan of the old copper grease, but for bolts like this, I think it's probably not a bad idea. Stock setting for this is 55 Newton meters. That's that. Now the steering arm, without trapping my glove. Right, I really don't like using these because they almost never hold. And when I say these, I mean the hex head in the top of the track rod. But you could probably tell that this one was spinning. It's a 5mm hex or Allen bolt, by the way. And I tried to hold it to wedge the taper in to the hub, but it wasn't having any of it. So, Allen key in the end. Tighten it up. That should be tight enough now. $35 Newton meters for that. Okay, next we move on to tightening up the hub nut. 130 Newton meters. Last thing to do is to just put the locking piece and the split pin back. Now, despite my excessive collection of split pins, I haven't actually got a single one that matches the size of this one. So, going to be reusing the old one, which I know is not ideal, but there you go. I think it's better to have one of the correct size. That looks in good order than it is to have one that's a bit too small. Which inappropriate tool should we use for this? There you go. Oh, it's not even an impact extension either, is it? There. Nice and secure. Okay, so hopefully you can tell by the fact that I am back in the driving seat of the Leaf. I've done the same on the other side as the first side that I've just showed you in the video. And now we're at the important bit, test driving it to see whether our work has been in vain or whether it's been a success. I actually already know, because in the course of driving the car to the place where I did the video beforehand, I've already been able to tell that it has been a success. I'm really pleased to say. I hope it's obvious that I wouldn't be doing this video if it hadn't worked. So I've done the other side. In an ideal world, you'd have the wheel alignment done at this point as well. I haven't had that done yet, but always a good idea to do that. You'll also notice, if you've got an eagle eye from the mileage, that the car has now covered 684 miles since I've done the work. And the reason for that is that I've seen a lot of posts in forums, various places, people saying, yeah, I went to Nissan or wherever else, I had this done, and then 2 weeks later it came back. Well, we're more than 2 weeks down the line, and as I said, 684 miles down the line, and it still hasn't come back. I'll show you what I mean. So before, what I did was just put the car in regenerative braking mode and do some gentle acceleration and deceleration. this is a hideously muddy road, and it's also wet, so can't get complete silence on the road surface, but I hope you can tell that it's not doing what it was doing before in terms of that click as we were accelerating and decelerating. So I'm really pleased that this fix has it's dealt with that annoying problem. It's not quite clear whether it's lubricating the splines or the face of the drive shaft where it mates against the wheel bearing that's actually was causing the noise, and so therefore has fixed the problem. But I don't really mind, I did both, and I'm quite happy it's worked, quite happy with the lubricant that I used. So that pretty much brings this video to a close. I'll put links in the description to the parts I used to do this repair if you want to follow along at home yourself. Got any questions or feedback, please leave them in the comments section below. And if you like this video, if it helped you, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. While you're here, do make sure to check out my other Nissan Leaf videos. For now then, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.